ado, I would like to say hello and welcome to everyone who is joining this discussion. And before we begin, I would like to say that this event is in English, but Spanish translation is also provided. At the bottom of your screen, you can find an icon that looks like a globe. And once you click on it, you will be able to find English and Spanish options. My name is Dragana Todorovic, and I'm the Executive Director of ELC, Euro Central Asian Lesbian Community, which is a network of lesbian organizations and lesbian individuals for Europe and Central Asia, and I will be moderating this event. And before we begin, and just a small note that we use the word lesbian with an asterisk, by which we mean that this term is inclusive of lesbian, bisexual, queer women, both cis and trans, as well as non-binary persons and intersex persons who feel connected to the lesbian identity. Thank you so much for all of you who have registered for this event. The last time I checked, we had almost 70 people who registered. And I see that we have a number of people who are here in the audience, which only goes to show that this discussion is very timely, having in mind the violence against women human rights defenders is on the rise across the world, and we will talk about that today. This dialogue is taking place in the framework of the generation equality processes, and is organized as part of the initiative of the Action Coalition on Feminist Movements and Leadership, where ELC is one of the leaders, and is one in the series of thematic dialogues that are leading up to the International Women Human Rights Defenders Day, which is, as you all know, next week on the 29th of November, which will also be commemorated with another high-level event that will bring together civil society organizations, states, and UN institutions to recognize women's human rights defenders of all ages in all of their diversity and highlight the need to protect and enable safe environments for their work. This event today, as I say, will be a much needed discussion about the various forms and consequences of online and offline violence against women human rights defenders, while we will also try to shed particular light on the implications of intersectional experiences, all of that in a context of backsliding of human rights of marginalized groups and increased pressure on human rights defenders. This conversation is as topical as it is urgent, as so many of us face violence and harassment for publicly standing up for women's rights across the world. Having said that, today we will have a chance to exchange with leading academics, politicians, and activists from different world regions. And we will be able to learn from their individual experiences, struggles, and strategies. But this will also be an opportunity to discuss the role and accountability of national and multilateral institutions in securing protection of women human rights defenders. Today we will have 6 wonderful speakers, and we will also have some time for questions at the end of their speeches. And these 6 speakers are the following. We will have Dr. Lilia Juni, who is a researcher from the Cambridge Center for Social Innovation at the University of Cambridge. And she's also an author of the book called The Threat: Why Digital Capitalism is Sexist and How to Resist. Lilia is coming from Italy, and she's based in the United Kingdom as a researcher. We will also have Melanie Vogel, who is a feminist academic and politician. She's also a member of the French Senate in France. We will also have Shadi Amin, an Iranian human rights defender. She's also a coordinator of the Iranian Lesbian and Transgender Network. We will also have Antonella Lerca Duda, a Roma trans human rights defender and also a sex worker who is also a member of the board of Transgender Europe. She's from Romania, and she's also an author of the book called Sex Work, a Transgender Perspective. We will also hopefully have, since there are some connection issues, we will also have Klengiwe Buthelezi, who is the executive director of KwaZulu LGBT Recreation from South Africa. And finally, we will also have Evgenia Yakumopoulou, who is the head of the SOGI unit of the Council of Europe. I will first give the floor to Dr. Lilia Juni. Lilia, you have been researching specifically the issue of online gender-based violence. And in your book, you explore specifically the intersections between technology, patriarchy, and capitalism. Could you please tell us a little bit more about this phenomenon, and more specifically, how is it used as an organized way to censor women human rights defenders and other also highly visible women? And also, how has digital capitalism embedded and reinforced it, making it much more difficult to handle? Lilia, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Dragana, and thanks a lot, you all, for the invitation and for joining. It's genuinely a real pleasure to be with you all today. So let me start with a personal reflection. I realized this morning that exactly 4 years ago, I sat in a panel not unlike this one, made of other wonderful women activists, human rights defenders, feminist experts from across the world were gathered on November 25th to discuss gender-based violence and online gender-based violence specifically. And at the time, so 4 years ago, we felt there was genuinely a huge need to raise awareness around the sheer existence of the phenomenon. Its size, its seriousness. At the time, we were telling people, look, Amnesty International has calculated that there are politically engaged women who on Twitter receive an abusive message every 30 seconds. And people were surprised. They were even shocked. And then sadly, after being surprised, some of them were like, and so what? What's so relevant about this? And so our job was to do a lot of explaining on the top of that. Our job was to explain that digital gender-based abuse has essentially the very same impact produced by other forms of violence against women, that the victims and survivors of online violence develop anxiety, depression, PTSD, that many of them are forced to modify their online habits, that some even abandon human rights activism or leave their work, or leave politics, precisely in order to limit internet exposure to defend themselves. We had to explain that gender-based violence exists in a continuum, that it manifests itself in different forms that feed into one another, and so that the boundaries between physical and cyber violence become often very blurred. But, a few years have passed, and I'm pleased to say that we worked well, we have raised plenty of awareness, and we've made a few tiny steps forward. So now the public, as well as mainstream media, policymakers at different levels, slowly but steadily, I would say, have finally, eventually started to take more seriously digital violence against women and against politically engaged women specifically. But there is a but, or rather there are several. And I think these buts help explain, why the problem is still tragically there. So far, I would say, public and decision makers' attention has been mostly focused on one specific perspective, which is the micro level of individual perpetrators. So people, and again, even decision makers, have been spending their time wondering, say, why a certain specific internet user might start to send threatening message to a queer activist or a politician or a female journalist and so on and so forth. So they might wonder whether this person, this man, because it is men most of the times, might have mental health issues, or perhaps his girlfriend might have broken up with him, and now he might hate all women. And you see, these kind of loopholes, this kind of perspective, this kind of interpretive lens, if you like, in my mind, does not help us much at all. Because what we are talking about here is systemic, structural matters. And so we should be considering structural, systemic causes, the ones that hide behind that individual, that social media users, was clearly, just the tip of the iceberg. So one of these structural causes is, of course, the patriarchal culture in which we all still live enmeshed. But I certainly do not have to explain that to an audience like this one. And so I like to use the rest of my time to answer Dragon's question and talk instead of the mechanism whereby that patriarchal culture gets fed, gets exploited, gets perpetuated, and gets monetized. And by whom? Because in my mind, this is truly the heart of the matter, the heart of the problem. So one of the things I do in my work, and I've done in the book that Dragon mentioned, is precisely trying to answer this simple question: who profits from online violence against women? Who turns it into political or commercial gain? And the answer I found is that there are two types of actors who are guilty of exactly that. First, there are political operators, sometimes at very high level, who very consciously use online misogyny as a tactic to manipulate the electorate. Donald Trump's former advisor, Steve Bannon, for example, has explained, very bluntly, multiple times, that creating chaos on the internet and even mobilizing social media users against specifically carefully selected enemies for women, most of the times, and most of the times women were very passionate about human rights, has been to him and to the Trump White House a way to consolidate support. Because providing internet users, providing social media followers with an enemy, a scapegoat, helps radicalize them, fidelize them, keep them on edge, keep them active. Trump himself, when he was president, has done that repeatedly, throw into the internet walls activists, journalists, Democratic congresswomen like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Ilhan Omar. Famously, he even falsely accused Ilhan Omar on Twitter of having celebrated dancing the anniversary of 9/11. And so he steered against her such a deluge of rape and death threats that the US Capitol has to review this congresswomen's security protocol. But Trump and Bannon are by no means the only ones. Similar strategies have been used across the world, among others by Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, by Matteo Salvini in my native Italy, by elements close to the Kremlin in Russia, or to the Premier Modi in India. And in all of these cases, the women who were targeted had taken specific instances on human rights topics, such as migrations, human rights violations during war, human rights violations related to climate change. Very importantly, several of these women were Black, or brown, or lesbian, or transgender, or belonged to a sexual or ethnic or religious minority within their country. And that, of course, made them, as I said before, ideal scapegoats, ideal enemies around whom to build a narrative on which, these increasingly machoistic political leaders could present themselves as saviors and as defenders of the traditional order. But there is, I think, another elephant in the room, and it has to do with how and why the digital platforms, which host the vast majority of online violence against women, have been so far unable to effectively tackle all this. Because obviously, the political operators I just mentioned can behave as they do because someone lets them. And you see, the platform's version of the story most of the time is that they're doing their very best. They have updated their community standards, they have signed protocol with the European Commission, they meet regularly with human rights organizations reps, they have hired thousands of content moderators, so workers whose job is among other things, to monitor the spreading of online violence against speech. And, workers who actually face rather dreadful, exploitative working conditions, which is another of my areas of research, and which sadly we do not have the time to tap into today. But what is relevant here today to our discussion, I would say, is that none of these measures, none of these strategies can really solve the problem. Because one of the reasons why violence and hate spread online, including those motivated by gender specifically, or by the intersections between gender and other forms of identity, is social media platforms' own business model, which is based, as many of you will probably know, on data mining. That is to say, on the extraction of data from each and every of our online interactions. What we click, what we post, what we comment, which then in turn gets transformed into rather sophisticated predictions of our future behavior, which are used by the platforms to the benefit of their own real clients. So the brands that use the platforms to reach us with targeted advertisement. But for this business model to work, obviously the platforms need to keep us all glued to the screen, to keep us online as long as possible, to produce more data and to absorb more ads. And one of the ways in which social media platforms achieve this goal is by algorithmically facilitating the circulation of content that is classified as controversial, divisive. And what's more controversial or divisive than sexism or racism or homo, lesbo, bi, transphobia, and so on and so forth. Importantly, another second expedient that platforms use to keep us all constantly hooked online is to feed us content that is similar to content that we have already visualized in the past. And this mechanism, tons of studies have shown, has led to the radicalization of many internet users into hate groups, including anti-feminist, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ plus coteries, because what happened to these internet users was that they literally precipitated into a rabbit hole of hateful, misogynistic, or otherwise bigoted materials. So from my perspective, this is really the black heart of digital capitalism, which is tightly linked to the novel forms of violence against women, which we are discussing today, and to the political weaponization of misogyny, which I described before. And until we acknowledge and tackle this, it would be rather hard to get out of the hole. So to conclude, I think this is genuinely the challenge that in years to come await us all women rights fighters. Raising awareness of the fact that, yes, of course, we must eradicate patriarchal culture and the stereotypes that harm us all. But if we truly want to protect women, we must also intervene on the political and economic dynamics that help perpetuate that culture. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Lilia, for providing this, I think, very useful introduction also for the other speakers. I think that what you just shared with us, that puts everything in the context of the political, but also the economical, provides a very good basis on which we can continue this conversation. And I will now, from the academic sphere, so I will move on to the political sphere, which was also mentioned in your introductory speech. As I mentioned in the beginning, we have with us Melanie Vogel. Melanie is also an academic, a feminist academic, and a politician. Melanie is a member of the French Senate in France. Melanie, I hope you're here and that you can hear me. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. I know you're taking this call from the airport because you just landed in Austria, and you also have another engagement that you have to attend to after this event. So really, really thank you for taking the time to take this call even in such circumstances. So Melanie, this is a question for you. You are a politician and, as I said, a member of the French Senate, and you are also a feminist and a lesbian in the Senate, which is not so often the case. And as a politician and as a public figure in your work, you are trying to make sure that women's human rights are promoted and defended. And most recently, you have been focusing on making sure that the right to abortion is added to the Constitution. That is also inclusive of trans persons as well. So being a feminist politician and a very vocal one has, of course, unfortunately, not been without its challenges. And you yourself have been harassed for your positions and for raising your voice. So can you share with us your own experience of being a public figure defending women's rights, and also your views on the importance of tackling online and offline violence towards women? So Melanie, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you very much. First of all, yeah, I'm sorry for the noise. I think it's not ideal, but indeed I'm in the middle of an airport and I cannot do better than this, unfortunately. I was trying to find a quiet place in Vienna's airport and it does not exist. So yeah, I think none of what I'm going to tell you today is going to be a big surprise for you, I guess. But yeah, I was elected a year ago, and I'm today the only openly lesbian senator in the French Senate, in a Senate that is composed by 70% of men, an absolute majority of conservative. And when I mean conservative, it's really the conservative part of the conservatives in France. And I think most people are more than 65. So it's an environment where basically my profile is not very average, let's say. And this together with the position I'm taking, obviously, and yeah, it's not a surprise for you, the regular daily target of insults, threats, sexist and Islamophobic comments. It was always the case when I was active in politics, but when I got elected in the Senate, it became like to an extent that I mean, I was a little bit prepared for that because my girlfriend is a politician and I knew what she was like facing. But to be honest, I was not always totally ready for this. Like it happens basically, of course, it's more intense when I'm taking the floor on progressive issues, on women's rights, on feminism, etc. But also, I think it's important to realize that it's basically also happening all the time. Like I think whenever you just take space in the public space as a progressive woman, you get attacked. Like I don't even have to say something about feminism to receive hatred. I can also just say something about whatever tax issue, a nuclear power plant, renewable energy, anything, and then I get 100 trolls commenting and blah blah blah. I think the consequences of this are like diverse, and they have to do with the defense strategy that we all have to tackle this, that are different. Some people just leave the public space to protect themselves from this violence, which is in itself a democratic problem, because you have a whole part of the society that is not present anymore in those spaces. Others, like me, who, I mean, sometimes I also go away from social media when it's too much, but generally, I don't want to leave the space because I consider that it's, at least for me, for a politician, that it would be a mistake. But the thing is that it's true that I get used to it. And also for myself, even if I know politically that it's not normal, I realize that I tend to also, yeah, just used to it. It's, for me, it's part of my job. It's to table amendments, defend things in plenary, and receive hatred. Like that's part of the job description a little bit, which obviously is a big problem. And I think that's why it's so important to visualize it and to like show that this is happening, because every time I do that, I tend to do it from time to time when I receive things that are really outrageous or when it's debated. So, for example, I gave a speech a few days ago because we were discussing something in the French Senate about attacks on elected people, and we were defending an amendment to include sexist attacks. And I decided to read out part of the things that I'm receiving just to show people what it is. Because as you can imagine, in the French Senate, most people don't receive this kind of comments. So they don't really know what it is. It's very theoretical for them. And I realized that even me, when my goal was to show what I'm receiving, but still I censored some of the worst comments because I was like, no, okay, this really, I cannot say that it's too awful. But in a way, I still feel it's okay that I receive them, but I find them so awful that I don't even share them with others anymore. Which I think it's useful also for me to have this kind of self-realization that that there is a problem, but also it helps. I think it helps the others to realize that it exists, but also it helps us. Like me, it helps me when people, and I see that they find it totally abnormal, outrageous, and it helps me to not interiorize too much that this is just part of a thing that I have to accept as a feminist politician. You know, it's like this: you receive big insults and death threats and rape threats, and it's like this. It's your life now. And of course, I think when it comes to the, I would say the consequences are two. One is some people just leave, and others tend to get used to it, which I think in both cases, it's a problem. And when it comes to the responses to the solution, of course I don't have answers to all of this. Otherwise, probably I would have advanced more on this. But I think generally, when it comes to online violence, at least one thing is we need legislative answers that mainstream, that take into consideration the fact that it's a systemic problem and not deal with them like any sort of individual violence. But also, and it was said before, take into consideration that the place where it's happening, social media platforms, are specific with specific rules, specific business models, specific algorithm, and you cannot just deal with violence in the space like you would deal with violence in other public spaces. And I think that's now what is really lacking at legislative level. And it also comes from, the fact that a lot of people don't care, but also from a lack of knowledge of how this word is actually designed and is actually working. And I also think that, of course, legislative answers are one thing, and I'm sensitive to that because I'm a parliamentarian, so my job is also to give legislative answers to problems. But there are also other type of answers, and I think what you're doing today is also major in tackling this, because the level of knowledge of the society on this is part of the solution. If people are more and more conscious that this exists and there is a risk, we have more chances to regulate it. Yes, that's more or less what I wanted to say. I'm sorry that I will have to go now and take train to the city center. But thank you very much for having invited me, and I wish you a very good event, and I hope next time I will get the chance to stay longer and also talk with people who are in the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Melanie. We really appreciate it. We will now move on from Melanie, and we will make a slight change in our program. I would actually like to go now to Hlengive Buthelezi, because she's been having issues with the connection, and she has seemed to find a very good connection, or a connection that will work right now. So I will just use this opportunity to give the floor to Hlengive Buthelezi, Executive Director of KwaZulu LGBTI organization from South Africa. HB, I think you can hear us now, and I hope your connection is good. I will just give a brief introduction. You HB, we call you HB. You are an outspoken and visible LGBT activist in South Africa, in the region of KwaZulu. And in addition to being a human rights defender, you are also involved in politics. And you are also trying to bring the voices of women and LGBTI persons to the forefront. You are also a community leader and a community builder. You are working heavily on strengthening and empowering the LGBTI communities also through sports. And working on these topics in South Africa is not easy. It's sometimes very, very difficult, and you have faced many challenges in your work. And I also know that part of your work is also dedicated to addressing corrective rapes. So can you share with us your experiences and your thoughts about online and offline violence towards women human rights defenders in South Africa? So HB, the floor is yours. I hope your connection is good enough.
Thank you. Is this audible?
Yes, excellent,
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone online and in the panelists. I'll say good afternoon because it's my afternoon, 1400 hours to be precise. Yes, you have well put it. What do I do in South Africa? Because as you speak to me now, we are starting what you call the 16 days of activism. This has been the government call, specifically, these 16 days, specifically looking at the gender issues, prioritizing women. Now, so with that said, just like the previous speaker, on a political level, there's a lot of chauvinism towards women. There's lots of abuse that could be emotionally, that could be at some point it gets physical, although it hasn't happened to me at this moment, but I've seen and I've noticed women, it has happened to them. The most craxing thing in this region at this moment, we are sitting at hate crimes. As we are launching this program today, the 16 days of activism, 2 days back, today is Friday, on Wednesday, I was attending to the hate crime in this urban that I am in, this suburb I'm in. What is happening is there's a Elena who is doing her last year in high school. She was attacked by 7 boys. 4 of the 7 boys are her classmates. The fight is over a girlfriend. Then they beat her up. As we are speaking now, she's lying in the hospital. In hiding, this is because she went to the first hospital and then they came, wanted to finish her off. Fortunately, through politics, then we had to intervene and we spoke to the premier. In your terms, it will be something like a prime minister. So she was moved. She's now in hiding, but with a fractured bone in her spine. Now, we don't know if this will end in disability or what, but here is the first concern. The priority concern is, at this moment in South Africa, they are writing the final exams of leaving high schools. So her classmates are writing exams. She's not able to write exams. This means she has to still come back to school next year, not going to the university, but repeating the grades. This is where the law has failed us, because in the whole of everything, when you maneuver these spaces, our law, honestly, in South Africa needs a whole lot of revamp. It is so women unfriendly, really. This cuts across any kind of sexuality of women, but it gets even worse for lesbian women. Let me say for LBT women, it gets really even worse, because in our queer sector, then even if you go to the police, you report the case, they themselves will still be homophobic towards you. They will make you a laughing stock. You come here, you report the case, but why do you want women when we are here as a man? It's not their way to, I mean, their place to say so. We are there to open the case. They should implement the law. That's all they need to do. So I'm saying this is what in the whole diameters, I mean, we are fighting around, whether it's law, whether it's in religion sectors, whether it's traditional leaders, political, of course, even in the community base, like you say, even at the sports leadership, we are fighting a whole lot of homophobia. Because even as a sport person, if you dare come out being queer woman, you will not get any sponsorship. You will not get any support even from your own team that you play for or that you run for. Imagine South Africa has liberation since 1994. But to this day, our constitution allows, it has gay rights fully. The only problem we are sitting with, our society is still not educated. Or should I say there's a whole lot of ignorance in our society. They use religion, they use culture, they use personal vendetta hate, you know, like just their personal homophobia to say it is an African to be gay, it is ungodly, all these sorts of things. But come to us as leaders in the forefront, because we are busy helping these our members, but at the same time, you also get being victimized. I, for one, go a lot of verbal abuse from either the community or the leaders. Like for example, the case I'm dealing with now, even the police have their own share of homophobia. I went to the school management of the girl who is lying in a hospital. They are vehemently homophobic even towards myself. Remember, I went there to sort out the issue. I was also called names in that same school. So one can understand why this case happened, because as far as I'm concerned, they do not know what a lesbian woman is. Any woman deserves to be with a man. If you go any otherwise, you deserve to be reprimanded. So those are the fundamental issues, serious issues we are sitting with, that we really need this country to sort out. But one wonders how we are saying then, because honestly speaking, in our constitution, in our policies, in our bills, in every other sphere of where the legislative is concerned, it allows for gay people to exist and with the full rights. It is just our homophobic people that are committing these crimes. But then again, now our law must take its course. The same law which is homophobic, from the judge to the prosecutor to the lawyer itself to the police, that when you come, you want to arrest someone, you know. As I'm saying, a lot of these perpetrators who are committing this crime towards our queer sector are walking in our streets to continue victimizing other people. You know, so I was in my mind, I'm trying to think, because by law, fully in South Africa, fully by law, we have a right to exist in all other ways. This, I mean, even right to adopt, right to marry, with full rights. But these things still happen. As I'm sitting in this, I mean, in here, when you say we're launching the 16 days of activism, the provincial parliament is here, meaning from the prime minister to the provincial ministers are here in different departments, the health, the social development, and education, they're here. Even the local leadership, which is our municipality, they're here. Because we want all united to say, stop this. But yes, we say with mouth. As far as I'm concerned, the law has to shape up. Our law really has to shape up, because we've even written to the president. We want to pass what it's called hate crime bill, because we've realized just if a lesbian woman is being murdered, nothing happens. It is just regarded as one of those murder, and it is not being prioritized. If then we have a hate crime bill in place, it will then at least work as a tool, that they will look at it singly, and then it won't be just die in the middle of any other cases. So this is where we are in terms of the legislative. Really, it is our legislative institution really needs a whole lot of shaping up. As I'm going to go back to this event, that's what I'm going to say, because the premier is there, the MECs are there. So in my portfolio, really, that's what you're calling upon. In their position, they need to work with us. They need to help us. Because what also our hindrance in this case is, even the government, when it comes to resources, none of our organizations have fundings. None of our organizations have fundings. We've applied for fundings, nothing happens. We speak about this in the media, nothing happens. And we would like to know the answers why, because every other department has certain percentage of budget that they can spare. It's not like we want luxury. We're talking about simple resources that whenever there is a case I need to respond to, I need a transport to get there. When I get there, is the victim safe, like a place of safety? Is the victim has a medical attention and all those sort of things? That is why we need those kind of resources, basic, which they don't give us, So that's what I'm going to also to touch on when I get there. Really, we need kind of things, because unfortunately with the law also, it also counts if you have money. But then my thing is, why must I buy my rights? Because being provided with law, it is my right as a citizen. Why then must I pay for it? Even if I pay for it, how far would that go? Because not everyone has money. We are sitting running this organization really like on nothing, on no budget at all. We pull here and there, Sometimes we use our families' resources, which they're very minimal itself, But the government must step up on that matter, So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, there's a lot of bullying, even in us leadership. There's a lot of bullying. I was supposed to be a fully fledged MPL, but it didn't happen because, yes, of the sexuality. Yes, you see now, they will not tell you. These things happen invisible. It happened indirectly. It's not something that is verbally spoken, it's something that is written. You can just see. That's the attitude towards it, because what else could it be? You are out there working, but they will go and take somebody unknown, So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anything at all, but I would be happy to take questions if then maybe the case. And thank you for the platform. And I was listening to the previous speakers. Seemingly, it seems like our plight is similar, even if we are living in different countries. It's just the different dynamics, But let us not fail to try. We can only try. For the next generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, HB. We will definitely, we all have to keep trying from all possible angles. And thank you so much for underlying some of the key issues and challenges that are in the background of this problem. So more resources and a more enabling environment for civil society organizations, better laws, as you said, and also the changing of the social attitudes of the general population. And we can, of course, come back to some of the things that you still wanted to raise in the questions and answers section, particularly in relation. I was really interested to ask you a little bit more about your political experience. As you said, you wanted to become a parliamentarian and you couldn't because of the attitudes. We will now go to Shadi Amin. We will address what is happening currently in Iran. And Shadi, thank you so much for agreeing to join this conversation. I know you just came back from Geneva, where you gave a statement about the situation in Iran. You yourself, you are a human rights defender. You come from a country which is currently, I think, the main battleground for women's rights and freedoms. Being a woman and being a lesbian in Iran means that your life is constantly under threat, and we have all seen the terrible murders of women and the death sentencing of lesbians. So fighting for the rights of Iranian women is at the center of your work, and you are doing it very openly, publicly, and visibly. And you yourself have been exposed to terrible death threats and sexual harassment. And just most recently, this week and end of the last week, you have received an ELC award last week, which has also been reported on BBC Persian. And because of that, you have been exposed to terrible death threats and sexual harassment. And this just happened a few days ago. So Shadi, can you please share with us your experience as a human rights defender that comes from Iran, and your views of the current situation in Iran, and what we all can do and should do to support you and women human rights defenders who are right now fighting for their freedom in Iran. So Shadi, thank you once again for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dragana. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I think that we have really the same story, most of us. And when we talk about social media or digital or online bullying, then we see that it is the same method, the same systematic way when they try to attack us as lesbians, as women. So, but I think we should be aware about that it is not always the attacks from the men who hate women, or it's not always attacks from the persons who are jealous of you, or all of that. We have state sponsored online bullying, which is in Iranian context, one of them, which is important, which makes it more dangerous. And it is a systematic attack against some of the faces of the community. And in our case in Iran, without willing to make it, to exaggerate about my role, I have to say I am most hated person in social media when it comes in LGBTI community. So we have other women who are attacked, like Shadi Sadr or like Masih Ali Nejad, and they are women rights activists or human rights activists. They will be attacked as women, also from the Iranian government and from the men in the community. But in my case, it is not new, unfortunately. It was my motive as I was attacked about 13 years before. When they attacked me and they wrote about my sexual life, some illusion they had about sexual life of a lesbian woman. And at that time, it has hurt me a lot. It was one article from a psychologist who wrote about the lesbian who use dildo or who have not been able to have a man as partner, and like these things that all of you know that. So this lesbophobic form of definition of being a lesbian. So it has hurt me a lot, really. It was one article, only 5 lines about me. And the person didn't know me even, how I live, who is my partner, nothing. And so I started to build a community to make it possible to resist and to do something against this kind of homophobia in online space. But I didn't know, I had no idea that it will be growing and growing, and it will come to attacks like what I faced in the last 6 days, which are more than 20,000 posts and comments, which to be honest, I didn't read all of them. I didn't read, maybe I read about 20 of them, and it is enough. It is enough when you see how brutal and how, because when, for me, is attacking me is not about me, because I know when they attack me, they try to make the other younger lesbians to be afraid of being public, to be afraid of being involved in the politician issues, to be afraid to be loud, to be afraid to challenge the society. And this makes me really angry, because I know that I can deal with that. I have the power to deal with that. It is really, sometimes you go to your how do you say, red line, that you are not able to resist anymore. And for me was last week, Wednesday, one of these days, that I preferred not to come out from the bed. But I know I have some keys in my head. I say, no, you will see. I fight. I come. You can't kill me. You can't. I don't allow you. And this is not easy to do that. And it is not easy always to do that. And in my case, I had a systematic attack about 7 years ago. It started as I published my book, Gender X, which is 600 pages about the history of LGBT persons, focused on lesbian and trans people in Iran. And it's an analysis about this controversial issue in Iran, that trans people are allowed to undergo the reassignment surgeries, and the homosexuality will be punished with flogging and death penalty. So, because nobody has looked at this issue, why we have this law, why the people think that trans people have a legal status in Iran, and they are happy with that, and they think Iran is paradise of transsexuality. So 7 years ago, I finished somehow 5 years research about the issue, and interviewing more than 105 member of the community in Iran, in Turkey, in Europe, and in Canada. So to make clear and to register this period of our history in this book. As the book was published at 12 o'clock in the 17th of May 2015, it was the day against homo and LGBTI phobia. And they started the day after at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a simple article asking who is Shadi Amin, and if she receives project money, what does she do with this money? It was a simple question. You think, okay, when I answer this question, everything is okay. No, wrong. It continues with more than 73 articles about rape, money laundering, brutal violence against the members of the community. All this article without any name. And after we started to talk about that, why these articles have no name, they started to write under every article, Dr. da da da, a funded name that you couldn't see. And some of them wrote the city, Dr. Eli, this and that, in Zurich University. And you couldn't find these persons. But the persons who read this, they think this person exists. This is somebody who is raped by Shadi Amin and is telling her story. You think the person, you can't find the person because the person has difficulty to talk about it openly. After about 4 months, really hard time that I was going to therapy, because it's not easy to see in the eyes of the person, oh, we didn't know about your other life. So we are sorry, we don't want to be with you. So I found out who is behind of this website. They made a website in English and Farsi. They made a newsletter, weekly newsletter about Shadi Amin in English. They send it to all of the English media. They send it to Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all the funders, and said, keep distance from Shadi Amin. She has done this and that. And it was not easy to say, no, I'm not this person. All my life, I fought against child abuse openly in Iranian community. I was attacked in the University of Frankfurt because I made it public, child abuse cases about 28 years ago. All my life, I paid for these issues. What do the men think who has raped the women, children, and I was the person who fought against them. They come and say, hey, you see, Shadi Amin, who has fought against us, this is her history. It made me really angry. It was not in this case about me. It was about whole activities I have done. It was nothing in the moment. So I found out who is behind of these attacks. What do you guess? A security company in Holland. I become the information from them that it is a gay activist in Canada. A gay activist in Canada, a well-known gay activist, a gay activist who become more awards than you can think. A gay activist who will be now funded by a lot of, like Expedia, a lot of gay mode agencies who think he's an activist, they have to. And he changed the name of his organization after I won the court against him, because he didn't want that when they search the name of his organization, they come to the result of the court, to the court decision about this case. This person is Arsham Parsi, and maybe when you search his name, you will find him. As I found the name of this person, I couldn't really talk about 5 minutes. I was speechless. I was shocked. Why a gay activist that I don't know him? I saw him only 3 minutes and I said, hi, how are you? And one time in a ILGA conference in Mexico, I met him. And as he wanted to leave the conference, he wanted to kiss my hand. And I said, no, no, please. And he kissed my shoulder and said, Shadi, you are the person who gave us the motivation to be public, to be open. And after I heard his name, I was shocked because I couldn't understand between this hand kissing and this whole attacks. I started to go the legal way because it is really hard from Germany to go a legal way against somebody in Canada. You have to find a Canadian lawyer. You have to pay for that. No funding is for that. Nobody is helping you. You cannot ask the people because they think, we don't know what we should believe. Dragana, please give me a sign when I am too long.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you another minute or two to finalize your speech.
Yeah,
we also have more.
I will.
Yes.
So all my friends, they were against that because they said, "What do you want to achieve?" And I said, "No, my name is for me important. And I have this is for me really hard, and I want to challenge this person." I won the court after 9 days, whole days to looking at all the documents. And he said in the court that I respect Shadi Amin with all her work and everything. And I won this case. He had to pay 25,000 as punishment, and a small part of the lawyer costs, which didn't help me because I paid more than thousands that I could buy an apartment here in Frankfurt. I paid for this court. All my money, what I had, and I had from my mother at that time. So, I mean, we are alone when it comes to fighting back. I was alone in whole the process. The Iranian feminist women, they failed to be clear in this case because they thought Shadi Amin wants to use that for her publicity. So it is really, you have to change the mind of the people that they say they are against the violence. Violence is for them. Every 25th of November, they make a postcard, a woman with an eye which is hurt and is wound in the face. They see this, the wounds in the face of the women and lesbians, but they don't see the psychological effect of such attacks. And they don't believe that. When you cry and say it hurts, they say, oh, everybody has received such comments. Everybody in the online is full, not acknowledging the pain of you, what you experience, not being able, because of the consequences, to stay with you, to be solidaric with you. These are things that I think we have to discuss about that and to make it together. I think we can really write books about that. And after this award, which I am really thankful for that, and they don't give us to have good moments. They don't give us the possibility to celebrate our victories, because exactly after that they started to attack me. I want to add only 1 minute and to say why they attacked me now, because I witnessed this award to Nika Shakarami, who is a 16 years old girl who is killed in Iranian in Tehran, and they said and she had a girlfriend, online girlfriend in Germany. They say when Shadi Amin gives this award to Nika Shakarami, it means Nika Shakarami is an LGBTQ person, and this is making our revolution bad, to give out to our revolution a bad face. And Shadi Amin is contra-revolutionary because she did it. And she is, I don't know. I mean, this shows how much homophobic backgrounds exist in such attacks, and how I think we have a far way before us, and I hope that we can deal with that together. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. It is a more than 13 years experience with dealing with such attacks, which I will try to make a book from that, because I think our pains, when we cannot make anger of that and to produce more energy for the community to go forward, then it's a mistake. We have to use it to show our anger against this society.
Thank you so much, Shadi, for this powerful speech and for sharing this very personal experience of different kinds of attacks that you have had to go through over the more than a decade, as you say. And we certainly hope that you will stay strong and powerful, and your resilience is an inspiration to all of us. And I could not agree more when you say that all of our pain, regardless if it's physical pain, and if it comes through physical violence or through other forms of violence, including online violence that we are talking about today, needs to be recorded, acknowledged, remembered. And I certainly support your idea to write a book about all of these experiences and thoughts that you have had. Speaking of that, and as I said in the introduction, this event is very much dedicated to talking about offline and online violence towards women's human rights defenders, but also from a specific intersectional perspective. We have been talking a lot about LGBTQ women and how they are experiencing this phenomenon in their work as activists, as politicians, as also academics. But now I would like to give a floor to Antonella Lerca Duda to give us another very important, crucial intersectional perspective. We really need to talk about this intersectionality perspective when we talk about women's human rights defenders. Antonella, thank you so much for agreeing to come to this event and share your experiences with us. You are a Roma trans human rights defender, and you're also a sex worker, and you come from Romania. And you are in Romania, which is not a very favorable context when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to LGBTI rights. However, you, as a Roma trans human rights defender and a sex worker, you are one of the most outspoken and visible human rights defenders in Romania. And you are, as such, advocating for the rights of trans women and sex workers, as well as the rights of Roma women. And as I said at the beginning, you are also the author of the book called Sex Work is Work, a Transgender Perspective.
Yes, I'm all in.
all of that. So as you are publicly raising your voice from such a multifaceted intersectional perspective in a society which is still very sexist, very racist, and very transphobic, this has its challenges in lived realities of you yourself, as well, of course, the communities that you represent. So can you, Antonella, share with us your experience and your thoughts about online and offline violence, and some thoughts that you may have on ways and measures that we can use to address it? The floor is yours, Antonella. Go ahead.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so happy that a trans woman intersectional speak to the European conference. So people should see intersectionality everywhere. Well, I don't know where to start. There are so many bad things here in Romania happening every day. Like in the past years, from coronavirus pandemic, all the movements, conservator, religious, started to grow very fast. So once the movement of conservator, ultra religious grow, hate also grow. Hate online and offline. We just barely 1 week ago, we just bear one trans woman killed by a man. So it's very actual, the violence in Romania against women. Imagine that all this, how, I don't know who said before about this funding money, all this religious taking a lot of money, and money is power. And in a country like Romania, when you have money, you are a power position, and you're gonna put your agenda on the lawmaker in parliament. Like we had until now a lot of attacks on our community, on our movement, like giving law against us. Even today, we have in the parliament a big law against against all LGBT agenda. Like they want to give censor everywhere. They want to shutting all the NGO LGBT. They are inspiring very much from Russia side. But luckily, we are in Europe, so I don't think this will happen. At least I'm optimist, and I hope this will not happen. Well, I rest here in Romania to do my fights because a lot of trans community don't have the courage to stand in front of the people and say, hey, I am a citizen like you, I want my rights. No, they're afraid because we have a background of communist and religious ultra-Nazi population. Even for Roma people, it's a long history of slavery, being slavery of the white peoples in Romania. So actually, the majority here in Romania treat us all the minorities, all the minority, ethnic, color, sex, they don't care. They all this minority put them down and says against them everything. But this doesn't mean that we're not fighting. We are fighting very well, and we can see that we are growing every day. All the movement, we're doing smaller steps, but we do the steps. Like I was the first trans woman ever candidate in Romania for a political place. This opened a new street and create a precedent for all the LGBT community. So this give empower and give hope to the all minorities that if you are Roma, if you are a sex worker, if you are trans, if you are whatever minority, you can have access to the political place. Of course, conservator give me the hate of my life because when you are very public and you are you also expose yourself to a lot of hate, a lot of internet hate, online hate, press hate, and physical hate. Just imagine that all my haters create a group of haters against me. So they are so, I don't know, let's call them solidarity between them. They create this group against me just only for giving hate. So I think all this movement against trans, against LGBT, against all is not normal. It's coming from 5 years ago from America, which Trump and all this shit coming. So there is a wave of hate coming from all over different direction. I think we'll end this wave one day, and I'm optimistic that we're gonna fight very well, and we're gonna put stop to this wave of hate because it does hurt us very much, and it hurt all the work that we did until now. It's like we are trying now, like in Romania, we do 2 steps forward and 5 backwards, never forward, you know. So we must keep with the teeth, with the strong, with the hand, just keeping the fight on, so that will not pass. Now we fight for this law to don't pass this gender studies banning law. That this is very copy paste from Hungarian law. You know, in Hungary, this trans and gender study banished the past, and now Hungary don't have this big university of gender study who moved from Budapest. So they inspire from this project of law, and they come with this project of law in Romania. Now, let me talk about me. Because I speak a little about movement, let me talk about me. Well, I am in all social media, like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you know, all this young age. And I'm trying to do there some education for free because, you know, I'm not paid for making education for sex education because we don't have sex education in Romania. So I will do for free on this social media. But, and this is the big but, all this company owned by an owner, they will not permit political discourse on social media. Like TikTok banned my account because I have trans LGBT activists. We all know that TikTok come from China, so they are very communist and they don't allow LGBT community have account and speak and make activists through TikTok. The other social media are also very hateful with trans people and more with the document asking and personal data where you are a trans woman and in document you are something else. So they always make this misgendering on documents asking and changing your name without your permission in profiles, Facebook or Instagram, and a lot of bullshit that they do there. Of course, we all know we live in a big patriarchy system and our nipples will never have to be online. But the men, okay, for the men it's okay to be with nipples out, the woman, no. Our sex work community, we are very affected on social media because there is this law called Fosta Sesta. It's a law who, ironically, this law was given by feminists, but more TERF, SWERF feminists who give this law to combat the trafficking, the human trafficking. But actually, the Fosta Sesta is not about human trafficking. It's about to eradicate and eliminate all sex work from social media and promoting your sex work on social media. Of course, we try to find some easy ways to take advantage of some little errors, some little words. We don't use words. Certainly, word we don't use it on the ads, on the social media. We try to put some, I don't know, some emoticon on the photo, so they will not understand what's happening. But if you are discovered, then you are bound, all your money taken, and so on. It's very hard for being trans in Romania because you don't have access to hormonal therapy, you don't have access to healthcare, you don't have access to justice, you don't have access to nothing, never, even for breathe. If you want to breathe, you have to ask the political if I can breathe or not. We are just in the start of the movement of intersectionality. Luckily, we don't have this TERF movement very hard and very often seen like we see on the high level when where feminists against sex work, against trans women, they declare themselves feminists, but they stop their feminist between your leg. Now they are more focuses on what you have on your legs, between your legs, not what you have on your brain. But yeah, this is TERF, this is SWERF, which I fight every day. And sometime I win, sometime I don't. But keeping fighting give me opportunities to know more ways to protect myself, to protect my family, yeah, because my community is my family. And giving more visibility to the most vulnerable part of the LGBT community. We all know trans women are most killed in the world. We recently had the TDOR, Transgender Day of Remembrance, that the number of victims are growing, are not going down. I always been optimistic and say, once with the visibility will come protection, will come, no, didn't come a fuck. We die. We die every day. We die without protection, we die without law, we die without healthcare who can save us. So yeah, it's hard, but I'm here. I'm still fighting. I was the first one that I wrote a book about sex work in Romania, and you know, when you do something that is against morality, everyone will attack you. So when I published my book, it was like a full wave of hate coming all over me. And it's a little bit hard being alone and fighting with all this hate. But luckily, I have this movement of trans growing sex workers who help and support each other. So this is very important when you are attacked and when you are being under hate wave. Someone has to be by your side and giving you courage to say, keep it on, keep fighting. Like I see a lot of people giving hate to everyone. Just don't give a shit, keep doing your stuff, because people will always attack everything what they are not like, or everything what they don't like. Everything what it's immoral for them, they will always give something. Even if you don't care about what they have to say, they will always have something to say. Like me, when I'm going in the day, going buy my cigarette, going buy my food, the guy there selling the stuff will always ask me, are you a girl or a man? And I always tell them I'm an extraterrestrial, I'm an alien, I'm just coming to Romania. So I am sick of all these questions every day, but I don't give it any more importance, because we have to have more take care of our physical and psychical healthy. Because if we gonna hear and listen to what stupid people will say, we're gonna go down to the burnout and to the other stuff. Then we're gonna fuck them in the mouth, kiss you, bye-bye. We should not listen to them. But we must fight them intelligent, using our own connection, using our politician who declare themselves, hey, I'm a leftist. Okay, leftist or not, I know you pretend you are leftist. Come here, give me this law. You know, we don't care. They have like 4 years. I don't know how much they stay in politics. 4 years, 3 years in Europe. I don't know. Well, you use this opportunity that when they are there and they declare themselves feminist, because it's now in the moda. It's like fashionable to be feminist and LGBT inclusion. Okay, give me this law. Then I don't care what you think. So, and if you want to make your image on my back, because we know how pinkwash working everywhere, but we should use this in our favor. And yeah, I'm working better with questions. You know, I'm not working with monologue, and I don't like this. It's like politicians speaking. We are not academicians. We are people in living. We talk to each other, interact. No, I'm telling you the poem of Shakespeare now. I wait for your question.
Thank you, Antonella. But your speech was exactly like someone was asking you many questions. So it was when we were listening to it, it felt like a dialogue, as you say. And thank you so much for all of these words. And we will keep the fight going, as you say. But we also have to keep the states and, as you say, politicians accountable. And that's why we have our next speaker here, Evgenia Iacomopoulou, who is the head of the SOGI unit in the Council of Europe. And Council of Europe is a multilateral organization with country member states. So Evgenia, this is a question for you, having in mind that the Council of Europe's role is to develop human rights standards and makes sure that the member states are implementing them both in relation to women's rights and gender equality, but also LGBTI rights. Can you tell us more about the role of Council of Europe in addressing violence against women's human rights defenders, and especially also from the intersectional perspective that relates to lesbian, bisexual, queer, and trans women, and also non-binary and intersex persons? And having in mind that we don't have a lot of time left, I would like to ask you if you can keep your response short, maybe to 5 minutes, and then we might have maybe 5 more minutes or 10 minutes for questions. We will go a little bit over time because we started with a bit of delay. And Shadi, I see.
Yeah, you know that I wanted to leave at 1:30. I think all of us, we have a lot to say and it took longer. I want to excuse by Evgenia because I have to be somewhere because of the all the issues. My plan is really changed every day, and today I have another appointment which I have to drive to there. Is about 40 minutes drive, but I have no 30 minutes. I'm really sorry, Evgenia.
No problem,
you know how I respect you and your work, and I am thankful for everybody else. And I'm sorry that I can't be there for the questions, but I hope that we have the same meetings in the future too. And thank you for inviting me and Evgenia.
It was really awesome hearing you, Shadi. Nice seeing you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry that I have to leave. I don't like it that the politicians, they come to talk and then go. They don't listen to the others. I don't like it. I'm so sorry that I have to do that.
It's okay, Shadi. We understand. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you very much. Evgenia, bye-bye.
Ciao.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Evgenia.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. I will try to then keep it short, just to maybe give more elements of reflection rather than an expose of everything that the Council of Europe does. Maybe just as a just to clarify a little bit that what the Council of Europe is, because it's an intergovernmental organization. So indeed multilateral. We have 46 member states. We're not the EU. That's important. Our mandate is specifically dealing with rule of law, democracy, and human rights. So and so we're much broader. We include Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and so the fact that it's a multilateral intergovernmental institution means that everything we do needs to reach an agreement, needs to reach a consensus. This is complicated in a context. We've heard about experiences around the world, and I think they echo very much what's happening in the European region as well. Very polarized societies, an increase in hate speech and hatred, a lot of manipulation by politicians of LGBTI phobias, which generally steers the anti-LGBTI sentiment for short-term political gain, something that is constantly called out by the Council of Europe. This is also complicated by an increased use of social media and the information communication technologies, and it results in really negative trends that we're observing, increasing systemic violences and violations of human rights, and overall what we have analyzed as a backsliding of human rights. And very relevant for this discussion, the fact is that at least for our region, we for sure observe that women's rights and LGBTI rights are the entry point for these attacks on, more generally speaking, human rights. Now, what's our role? Our role is to bring us those 46 member states around the table and agree on standards, common standards. Then we do monitoring and cooperation. Those are the 3 actions. There is, of course, through cooperation, but also through monitoring, which is basically the accountability part of it. There's a lot of avenues for civil society, for human rights defenders to engage, to flag the shortcomings, the needs, to alert on the systemic violations, and in a way to set the agenda. I think it's now talking about, well, our role, but also the accountability, the issues we have strengths and weaknesses as a multilateral platform. The weaknesses, of course, are, as I said, we need to reach consensus, which is difficult, and in a way means that sometimes when we have such diverse political, societal, cultural settings in the different member states, it might mean that we are agreeing on the minimum common denominator, the lowest one. At the same time, it also means that when we do reach consensus, we are really breaking some ground. And to just give two quick examples without getting into the details of the instruments, for example, my unit is there to support member states implementing a recommendation on combating discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. That was adopted in 2010. At that moment, this was the first ever instrument of this kind, and it really opened the way for a lot of improvement in the member states. Another major one for women's rights defenders is the Istanbul Convention. The Istanbul Convention is a treaty on combating violence against women and domestic violence, but it recognizes in it the need to, for member states, it's a treaty, which means it's enforceable directly by the member states, and they have to be held accountable. It's followed by sophisticated monitoring mechanisms, and some of the provisions include allocating appropriate funding for civil society. It also, well, encourages the support and the setting up and the protection of civil society dealing specifically with combating violence against women. And it also stresses their role in, for instance, assisting victims and participating in investigations and judicial proceedings. Now, this is a very important treaty, which is one that has been also very much targeted by the anti-gender movement, precisely because it deals with women's rights and it defines gender in it in an intersectional manner. So I'm going to skip all the other great examples of things that are actually relevant that we have been doing, but just maybe I think a lot of the elements that have been raised by previous speakers were to a certain extent have been touched upon, but from only certain angles, not intersectional enough. But for example, digital violence has been touched upon by specific instruments, a general policy recommendation, recognizing the effect of the silencing of women politicians, journalists, social media influencers, as was being mentioned by Antonella, but also the actual danger of not recognizing individual acts that are not criminalized as such, as Lilia was saying, that actually altogether this mob mentality actually do amount to very, very serious violations and need to be understood as such. So we also address the fact that these are all complicated by patriarchal values, and the fact that such language is used by the institution is, in my view, very important. And maybe the last thing that I will mention in this regard is the fact that, for example, we follow closely and push states and hold them accountable in cases such as the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia, the Maltese female journalist, which her case is a perfect demonstration of how prior to her murder, she had been attacked at her home. She had been the victim of vexatious lawsuits, again, something that Shadi was talking about, by smear campaigns. And of course, it led to very real violence offline, fatal violence, her murder. And the Council of Europe has been insisting that this was in large part due to a culture of impunity. So not addressing those lesser violations and offenses contributed to this tragic result. Now, okay, so accountability, well, two things. There is the accountability of states. Again, there's many mechanisms and tools, because peer review in multilateral settings is the way we count on member states to keep each other accountable. But also there are expert groups that rely heavily on information by civil society, specialized ones on anti-discrimination, on violence against women, for instance, on freedom of media. And this is where we allow the bottoms-up approach. Really, really, really key to keep making the member states accountable and making sure that they don't just sign up on some treaty and then they're happy with it and nothing happens. And then the last bit that I wanted to say is the role that civil society and human rights defenders can play, and women's human rights defenders can play in keeping the institutions themselves accountable in their role of keeping states accountable. because in part we see that the lack of data is reflected in the fact that we have less on women's rights defenders than we have on human rights defenders, and even less so on LGBTI women's rights defenders than women's rights defenders, and so forth. So intersectionality is often represented, underreported, not fleshed out, and also because our institution works so much in silos. So we talk about women's rights, we talk about SOGI, we talk about journalists, about hate speech, about artificial intelligence, cyber harassment. But then this is where the civil society plays a key role in showing the interconnectedness between all of these things, how they play out, and well, hopefully get us better and more accurate in our reporting and recommendations to member states. I spoke too fast, but I hope some of it was understandable.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Evgenia, for giving us this perspective from your institution. We all have a role to play. So civil society, states, multilateral institutions, academia, all of us, media, politicians, all of us have a role to play in addressing this issue. We are now over time. All of you have been very extensive in your speeches and explaining the way you think about this phenomenon and also your own personal experiences. So you have all been very thorough, I think, because we only got one question, which is great because we don't have much time left. Actually, we're over time. And this question is directed to Dr. Lilia. And with this question, we will also close this event. And this question is, I think, very important, also interesting to close the event with, because it looks towards the future. And the question is that, I will explain it a little bit, reformulate it so that you can better understand it. You are working on digital spaces and how they connect to violence, but also capitalism. So what is your opinion and how do you see this playing out in the context of newly evolving digital spaces such as the metaverse and all the other kinds or types of metaverses that are now underway and that will be probably used by all of us or many of us in the coming years. So how do you see this playing out in those spaces when it comes to the link between
That's a very interesting question. So I'm not an expert at the metaverse, but what I can tell you is that there have already been reportings of sexual harassment within the metaverse, as you can imagine. So people create an avatar, they explore the metaverse, and women, or at least people who create female avatars or perhaps queer avatars and so on and so forth, get harassed sexually, which I guess should not come as a surprise in a way, in the sense that, of course, online interactions do reflect and to a certain extent magnify what happens offline. So what do we do about it? I guess that's what the interesting question. And today, I think we have talked a lot about the problem, and some of us have hinted at what we could do about it. But of course, the big $1 million question is, and so what do we do? Well, in my opinion, one of the first things we need to do is to make big tech companies accountable, obviously, including those that are expanding into the metaverse. As I said before in my brief speech, we are dealing with an industry that in so many ways monetizes hate and violence and abuse, or at least is not taking action swiftly enough to prevent that. And something that I find really imagining, not just as an academic, because academia is what pays my bills, but what I do in my daily life is feminist activism, and I have for so many years. So what drives me really mad is that we all seem not to politicize in a way, or not to politicize enough the fight to make tech companies accountable. Within the EU, for example, within the kind of EU Commission framework, we are in the process of approving the so-called Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act. two pieces of legislation that will affect the lives of all of us in so many ways. And I think we all, as feminist, LGBTQ+, women's rights, human rights activists, should acknowledge that this really concerns us. This is the kind of legislation that is going to have a big impact over us, that has the potential, if done right, to limit the power of big tech, including, as you know, as been suggested, its potential expansion within the metaverse. And so we should use that opportunity because it won't last forever.
Thank you so much, Lilia. Really, really important that you raised this.
Yes, metaverse.
Antonella, you go ahead.
Metaverse, but what are we doing with Twitter? What do we gonna do with Twitter? Because this must believe that is his own personal toys, giving back voices to the most conservative, like Donald Trump, giving back his account. And we all know how misogynist is, how toxic is for all social media, and how his message are propaganda all over this account, fake or not fake. Then this account, fake or not fake, go and give bully to another person because the boss say like that. So we must also make a campaign for all this publicity, giving money to the big company for making publicity on Twitter, Meta, Facebook, and all. We must contact them and tell them that don't do publicity on this side because it's a shit site. It's better, look, do this. We must have trainings with all this publicity, because they live from the money from publicity, you know. Not because me, Antonella, I make an account on Twitter. They will not take money from me. They will take money from the publicity company who give the big data from me. So we must do a lot of training with them. And of course, expect to be worse, because it will be worse with all this social media going insane. And I think they do purposely this thing to make discussion between left and right, between feminist and non, because more rich people, more money, and in the data mode.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Antonella, and we all have to do from all of our sides what we can. As you say, we have to be prepared that things will get worse. And we definitely see some trends that are going into that direction, and we need to be prepared and we need to react. And maybe we can also think about how to be more proactive and less reactive but reactive, of course, as well, in the way we approach and address this important topic. And with this, I think I will close our event today. We are 15 minutes over time. I think I have a feeling that we could have stayed here for another an hour, if not more. And
we speak here all day, no problem.
Yes,
coffee, cigarette, we stay here and we speak feminism and all what you want all the day.
Yes, we can certainly do that. And also, I mean, this event, as I said at the beginning, is within the framework of the International Women Human Rights Day that is next week. But I just also want to, even though this is happening within this day, I want to remind all of us that we should not be talking about this topic only now within these days that are dedicated to this, but this should be our daily topic, because it affects all of us on daily level. So I really hope that this conversation and this dialogue will continue and will intensify among all of us from all possible fields of work, from politics, states, multilaterals, academia, media, and of course, the civil society. So thank you once again for joining this event, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye, and have a nice Friday and also a nice weekend.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.